Hi everyone, I'm Amy from Cauldron, and in today's Vlogmas I'm going to be making mince pies for Santa. I'm going to start off by making the pastry. Start off with 175 grams of plain flour and a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 25 grams of icing sugar and 80 grams of butter. Now this isn't straight from the fridge. This has been sitting out on my counter all day, but it's winter, so it's quite chilly. Put that on, and I'm just going to pulse this until I can see it looking like breadcrumbs. Okay. Right. And if I was doing this by hand, you could rub the butter into the flour and sugar like this until it looks like breadcrumbs. But it's so much quicker to do this with the food processor. Now that does look like breadcrumbs. I'm happy with that. Now this pastry, I want to be orange flavoured. So I've got the zest of 2 oranges there. I'm just going to give that a quick mix up. There we go. That's nicely mixed together. And now I'm going to add in 1 beaten egg. This is a medium-sized egg. And I'm going to very, very carefully blend this until it all comes together. There we go. So you don't want to work it, you don't want to overwork it. Now that has come together quite nicely. I'm not going to waste these oranges that I zested. I can now juice these and have some freshly squeezed orange juice. Now I'm going to take that out and I'm just going to pop it into this bowl. You don't want to overwork it and then your pastry will be tough. There we go, get it all out like that. I'm just going to pat it all together. Now, if you have any baking parchment, I would put this in between 2 pieces of baking parchment, but I don't have any baking parchment, so I am just going to cover this in cling film and let this sit in the fridge for probably a good 20-30 minutes at least, and then we'll be back to make some mince pies. This has been chilling for probably closer to an hour now. It's quite solid. I've sprinkled some plain flour on the counter. I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on top as well. Now, roll it out. I like to turn and flip my pastry like this just to make sure it's not getting stuck on the counter, because that has happened to me many times. It's very annoying when you think you've got the perfect pastry rolled out and cut and then it's stuck. So when you've got this thin enough, it's up to you how thick or thin you want these. I get my 9cm cutter, and in fact I've written pie base on it because I always forget which cutter to use, and I always end up using either one that's too big or too small. So I write pie base on this so I know this fits my pie tin. I've greased my tin with some butter. Now I'm going to cut 12 or as many rounds out of this as possible. I don't want to have to roll and re-roll this too many times, because the more you work it, the tougher it gets, and then it starts shrinking, and we don't really want all that. I think some of these might actually be a little bit thick. That one's fine. That one's fine. Yeah. If you have a look at these, I don't know how easily you can tell, that one is thicker than that, and that's more what I want rather than this one. So I might have to, yeah, I'm going to have to re-roll these. That one's fine. And then just gently press them into the tin like this. You don't want to use your fingertips and poke your nails through. I'm going to re-roll that one. Not happy with that. Don't want to have to re-roll this because it just makes it tougher. Actually, I might be able to roll this bit out that enough first? Yeah. There we go. So that is nice and thin. Nice thin pie base. You don't want it too thick. This pastry is enough to do 12 tops and bottoms, but you still need to be careful. That's looking better. Yeah, that's good. So that's 12 bottoms done. For my tops, I like to do something a little bit different. Because I have worked this a lot, the dough is going to shrink, annoyingly, which we don't want that. We don't want to seal the lids on top here and then have the dough shrink and everything leak out. So what I am going to do for the tops, roll this out nice and thin, and I've got these little cookie cutters, and I think if I cut a small star like that, and then it can just lay on top, possibly even a bigger one. Yeah, the bigger one looks pretty good. Now these will shrink, but I'm not too worried because they're more decoration than to seal the top properly. And then I've got hearts and flowers as well, which I think might be quite nice. So I've done 4 stars. I think I'm going to do 4 flowers and 4 hearts if I can. Now we need to fill this with mincemeat. Here's my jar of homemade apple mincemeat that I made in October 21. So that was 2 years ago. I have an apple tree in my garden, and so every year I have loads of apples. Apart from this year, actually, there wasn't that many apples. I get loads of apples, and I just run out of things to make with them because you get a bit sick of crumbles. So many crumbles. I might make 1 or 2 a summer, but there's so many more apples than this. So this time I decided to try making apple mincemeat. I cannot remember the exact recipe I used for this, but it was mainly apples, and there's a load of dry fruit in here, and you kind of just cook it all down, add alcohol, and just let it sit. I'm rambling now. I'm being generous with these. I usually overfill my pies and have everything leaking out. So I'm trying to be generous but not overfill. I think that one's overfilled. So put a little bit of that in there. I love making my own mincemeat. I make it every year, and once you've made it, as long as you seal the jar properly, it keeps for years. Like this one I made 2 years ago, and I've just opened the jar and it is absolutely fine. And now I can just add these just nicely on top like this. Just gently press them down. There will be a bit of bubbling going over these. I hope it will look good. One topping I quite like to do is to make a crumble topping. And that's, so I use flour, sugar and oats, rub them all together, add some spices, and then make these like little mini personal crumbles almost. There we go. Here's my tray of mince pies. These are going to go in the oven at 200 degrees Celsius. I have a fan oven, so they're going in at 180 Celsius in my fan oven. And I'm going to cook these for about 12 to 15 minutes until they are golden brown, but hopefully not burnt and overflowing. I left these to cool in the tin for a couple of minutes before taking them out to cool completely on this cooling rack. And I didn't forget that last bit of pastry that I didn't use for the mince pies. I sort of rolled it out into a bit of a rectangle and made 2 very rough pasties, almost, I think you might call them, filled with mincemeat. I like doing that with my leftover pastry. These have now completely cooled down, and finally I'm just going to add a little sprinkling of icing sugar There we go. These are now ready for Santa.
Ooh. Merry Christmas!